So, hi everyone. My name is Lindsay Hyduk and I serve as the president of the Community Council. Oh, and Arena is a host. Great, we've got many hosts. And welcome to our April meeting. We're glad to be here. We wish it was spring. It's maybe almost breakup. So what I'll first do is just again orient folks on our website, because if you're like me and at this meeting, you might want to click around and follow along as we go. So if you go to our home screen on our website, we have all of the login information and then a few short, quick links right here that take you to this different navigating bar on the right. So we've got our current agenda, our meeting minutes posted. We have a draft resolution we're considering tonight, and then we have meeting handouts, and the meeting handouts are all in this other category, and you can find a lot of information here. We have updates from our representatives and from the municipality and from the assembly, and lots more documents and handouts. If you were coming in person, we have all of these handouts posted here. So we've got our agenda for tonight and also our minutes. And tonight we are going to start with our updates from our state legislator. Then we're going into our Anchorage reports. Then we will have a presentation about the COVID-19 vaccine. We will introduce the topic around our capital improvement programs, as we need to do another prioritization for 2022. And then we'll have a discussion about a topic we covered at our December meeting, and a community member, Paul, has brought a resolution forward for us to consider on this. And we've got community announcements. This is a 2 minutes per person. If you'd like to introduce yourself, if you're new to the meetings, if you have issues you want to bring forward, events, opportunities, this is the time for everyone to share and speak. And then we also have door prizes. I did not get us to confirm a vote last time about allocating funds towards doing this, and we'd really like to, so we'll confirm that and then have an opportunity to have folks get a prize. And I think that reminds me that Arena might need to make a sign-in form so that we can randomize and do all that. So that's what we've got on our agenda tonight. Are there any questions or discussion on the agenda or the minutes from last time? And these are the two items we consider in our consent agenda. So I'll also ask if we have a motion to approve that.
Motion to approve?
I second.
Thanks, Paul. And was that Arena?
Irene.
Irene, thank
Close.
you. Perfect. Well, I will turn it over to you, actually, Irene. I'll introduce our executive board, and then I'll turn it over to Irene to give a welcome. We've got Meg Milkey, who is our secretary, and we've got Irene, who is our vice president. Tawny and Julie Leonard serve as auditors, so does Peggy, and Arena is our treasurer. So that's our executive board, and I'm going to turn it over to Irene for just a quick welcome.
Hi, everyone. I've been on for that whole half hour of happy hour, so fun to talk to everyone, old and new. One of the duties of being the vice chair is parliamentarian, which if any of you remember from high school speech and you learned about Robert's Rules of Order, that's what we use in this meeting. And if someone is out of order or causing disruption or whatever, that's the parliamentarian's job to kind of deal with that. So when we're in a room where everybody meets, like at the Spenard Rec Center, like we used to do, it's just important to be respectful of the speaker, not to have sidebar conversations. And I know in the past, somebody would be interested in something and they just go out in the hallway and speak. So in this situation, because we're on air being recorded, or in this situation where we really can't chat with each other the way sometimes the chat box, I'm a teacher right now, and having the students on chat, oh my gosh. So you have to make sure that the chats only go to the teacher and the questions are answered. So if you have a question or relevant issue to share, that's relevant to the topic that we're talking about, just keeping that in mind throughout the meeting. So I kind of mentioned that. All right, thank you. Just send them to the chat and they go straight to the host.
Great, thank you. And now we will start with our legislative update. We have Representative Chris Tuck on our agenda, and Harriet Drummond, you're always here. So we'll also turn it over to you for some time, but welcome, Representative Tuck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a weekly update on, actually, I guess a monthly update, since this is a monthly community council meeting. We are 21 strong in the majority, made up of Alaska Democrats, Alaska Republicans, Alaska Independents. But I tell you, it's a little bit of a struggle. I've never seen such a division in the legislature as we're seeing this year. As a matter of fact, the town hall meeting that happened 2 weekends ago, the minority had announced in the Matsu town hall that they're 18 and they've all agreed to be obstructionists and slow things down. And so we are probably going to be here a little bit longer than any of us would like to be. Our two obligations right now really is to pass the operating budget and to take up confirmation hearings for the governor's board appointees. And as everyone's probably aware, that the governor does have a lawsuit. The legislature has lawsuits against the governor because when we didn't take up his confirmations back in November, we extended his confirmation hearings on November 15th. We weren't able to call ourselves in because we couldn't get the minority to agree, because it takes 2/3 votes to do that. The governor could have called us back in, but he chose not to. And then he kept all those board appointees. And so now that's the lawsuit that we have right going to happen. But we do plan it. So our committees have been really busy for two things. One is the budget subcommittee closeouts, which just happened last week. And then also all the confirmation hearings that we have. The budget right now, the operating budget is going to have hearings on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So starting tomorrow at 1:30, we're going to be taking up public testimony. I think that tomorrow's, trying to think of when Anchorage is going to be. I might have it right here. Public testimony from Anchorage will be Friday from 1:30 to 3:30. So we're going to be bouncing around the state for people to be able to call in and share their views on the budget. It's pretty much going to be a flat budget from last year. Maybe some changes, those small changes here and there, but pretty much we're going to keep it as flat as possible. And that's going to help us. I mean, actually, what's going to help us this year in our budget is the federal relief money that we see. We have the American Recovery Plan. I gotta say, the federal government's going to really bail us out this year. So as we get through the operating budget, we won't have guidelines, federal guidelines till May 10th. And then once we get those federal guidelines, we'll be able to weave some of that federal money into our operating budget, education, public safety, all sorts of stuff, including capital projects eventually coming down the road. So we probably won't see the budget actually getting passed until probably middle May, maybe a little bit longer than that, because we have to allow the clerks to draft things up as we make amendments and make changes. So we will be here, unfortunately, probably to 120-day session. As you know, also the House was 30 days late in getting organized, so that played a little bit of a role. But last year we proved, and the year before that we proved that we can get the budget done really quickly when we need to. However, this year we've got to wait for that guidelines coming from the federal government. We are, just to give you an idea, with the American Jobs Plan that's being considered right now, because I talked about we got the American Recovery Plan. That's going to help out in our operating budget and everything else. And then we got the American Jobs Plan coming from the Biden administration. There's going to be about $115 billion for roads and bridges, $85 billion for public transit, $80 billion for passenger and freight rail, which I hope some of that can be up here in Alaska so we can make that intertie down the lower 48. $111 billion for water infrastructure, which we hope can happen here in rural Alaska, especially. $45 billion in lead abatement, $174 billion in electric vehicle incentives, $100 billion in funding for electric grid and clean energy improvements, which we hope we can use a lot of that here in Alaska. $180 billion for research and development, $42 billion for ports and airports, $100 billion for broadband, which is really needed in rural Alaska, and $16 billion to plug oil and gas wells, which we have a lot of legacy wells from the Army Corps of Engineers from World War I and World War II that are leaching and leaking here in Alaska. And then 10 billion for a civilian climate corps and 213 billion for affordable housing. So we expect that Alaska will be able to see a lot of good jobs coming out of the federal investment up here, and the investments that they have, basically statewide. I'm sorry, nationwide. We are pretty high in unemployment right now. We have about 3,500 Alaskans that initially filed for a new claim for the week ending in March 27th. Our unemployment right now is about a little over 5%. We have 15,000 Alaskans receiving insured unemployment benefits for the week up to March 20. Of that, 9,300 roughly were receiving pandemic unemployment assistance. Those are those that are self-employed, freelancers, independent contractors, and part-time workers that normally would not qualify for unemployment. So it's good to see that they have some assistance. And then another 16,000, roughly 16,500 Alaskans receiving the pandemic emergency unemployment compensation. And that's the additional stuff that's coming in from the federal government. So, here in Alaska, we're hoping to do what we can with the budget to stimulate jobs and get our economy rolling again. We are also looking at passing a separate appropriations bill for public education. As you know, pink slips will go out May 15th. We have in statute, and part of collective bargaining agreements is notifying teachers if their jobs aren't going to be available. So allow them to seek employment elsewhere, which is unfortunate. And so we're going to separate out of the operating budget just the base student allocation formula, just a bare minimum, and try to get that passed in the House and the Senate. The Senate actually asked us if we would do that this year. And we were willing to do that. We said yes, but we haven't heard anything from them. We do have a joint leadership meeting with them tomorrow. So we'll find out where they're at, but we already have it drafted. We have it ready to go. It's probably going to be introduced on Friday. And this is something that we did in the House back in 2018. Unfortunately, the Senate didn't take it up, so it didn't go any further than that. But if we can get that, education always seems to be the main thing that everyone bargains at the very end for getting our operating budget passed. So hopefully getting this off to the side and getting that out of the way will give certainty to our schools, certainty to our teachers who are investing in our children's education, and be able to take that off the table so we can have a smoother ride and bringing in the American Recovery Plan monies into our operating budget and finally come up with a final budget. I have introduced a few bills. Today I just moved House Bill 155 out of Judiciary Committee, and basically what that does is it's the Alaska Court Visitor Program. It's always been in the executive branch, and that is those who like the court visitors are the ones that conduct independent investigations to make recommendations to the court system about guardianships and conservatorships. The guardianship part of that has always been part of the Office of Public Advocacy and the executive branch. The conservatorship has always been in the judicial branch. Now we're moving it from the executive branch to the executive branch just to make things run smoother, a lot easier. And then I also have my House Bill 56, which is the elections bill. It's an elections bill that I've had over the years. I've modified it after the last election. And basically, once you vote by mail, you can always vote by mail until you miss an election, and then you'll have to reapply again. It's not permanent absentee voting, but it gets you there. And then also you're able to cure your ballot and then make it for same-day voter registration. It'd be treated just like a regular question ballot. And then changing the definition of early voting, because a lot of, there's only really 3 places that we have early voting. That's in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. And people in rural Alaska, when they went in to vote and they're voting to vote early for them, it's called in-person absentee voting. Well, people get confused because which is it? Are you in person? Are you absent? And so a lot of people were turned away from in-person absentee voting because they were home. And so big part of the bill too is to pay poll workers a little bit more money and get them training so that that doesn't happen again. Also, what it does is allows that once, because we're going through a redistricting right now, and once a polling location is established, it stays like that for 10 years. unless there's a fire or unless the facility is no longer available, because we saw in the past, especially during the Parnell administration, where they shifted the polling locations around. And to me, that's a little bit part of a voter suppression. So we just want to make sure we maintain that, because people are very routine oriented. And then just today, with support of Harriet Drummond and Andy Story, our co-chairs of education, and with Senator Tom Begich, we've introduced the Alaska Reads Act on the House side, because things are getting a little bit fumbled on the Senate side. So we thought that we would get our bill over to them before they got theirs over to us, so that we can make those necessary changes for our students. And there's a big pre-K component to it. And we all know that once you teach a child to read, then they can begin learning. And so we want to really do that early investment in reading so that they can become lifelong learners. And with that, I'll open up to any questions, because that was a mouthful.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Tuck. We just have a couple more minutes, so I'll also see if Representative Drummond has a quick update. And if folks have any questions, you can feel free to add that into the chat, and I'll circle back if we do have one. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm really glad Chris hit almost all the points that I was going to make. I'm going to post some details to your secretary, and she will post them on the chat regarding the time for public testimony, the numbers to call in, and all of that stuff. There's some kind of detailed directions about what time to call, and also where you can access the meeting so you can watch what's going on while you're waiting on the phone. And it's about a 2-hour period on Friday for Fairbanks, Kenai, Matsu, Anchorage, Bethel, Cordova, Kotzebue, Nome, and Utqiagvik. And you can send written testimony in if you lose patience. It will have just as much of an impact. It just won't be heard by the public until it's made part of the record. So we always appreciate your calling in and supporting or disagreeing with how things are being done in the budget. So, you know, we need that public testimony. We've been down here, heads down, working hard, trying to get things underway and moving after being unorganized for a month. So what happened in that month was the Senate got way ahead of us with policy bills, but we caught up with budget issues, and now the budget is going to start happening really quickly. What Chris said about the federal funds that are coming from the American Rescue Plan, we can't supplant operating budget funds with those, generally speaking, unless it's a piece of the operating budget that has been especially impacted by the pandemic. So yeah, there's a lot of money coming into the state, but it's not, it doesn't mean that we can cut our budget in order to use those federal funds. So it's really important for the legislature to appropriate those funds. And Chris, as chair of the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee last year, did a great job. I think he's vice chair this year, so he's keeping just as close tabs on it. And instead of letting the governor spend it the way he wants to, and as we all know, the governor has done a lot of illegal stuff and has spent a lot of time in court. In fact, one of the things that I did as a member of the Judiciary Committee, we looked at the budget, the Attorney General's budget, on all the lawsuits that the governor has been wasting money on that have been failing. You know, these guys have a really bad record, and, you know, at some point they have to stop wasting Alaskan tax dollars going to court on losing propositions. So he's hearing that from us in the Judiciary Committee, and he's going to hear it. He's going to hear it from us regarding this incredibly generous influx of money that the feds are sending to us, that of course all of us ultimately are going to have to pay for through our federal taxes. But meanwhile, we've got a lot of community members all over the state that really need help. The tourism industry is just devastated, and it isn't going to get any better. We're going to lose easily half the tourists that come to the state. More than half of the 2 million people that come to the state each year come on cruise ships. That ain't happening this year. And it's, even though the CDC just changed some of their guidelines for cruise ships today, they did not resolve the issue that Canada has control of, and that's keeping cruise ships from, foreign flag cruise ships have to stop in Canada if they're transiting between Seattle and Southeast Alaska. So that is killing the cruise ship season for all of Southeast Alaska and a whole lot of the rest of the state, because half of our visitors arrive on cruise ships, land somewhere like in Prince William Sound, or even come as far as Anchorage on the Holland America ships, and then take land packages from there and populate the rest of our state with tourists. So that's going to be, we're not going to see a lot of tourists this summer, although the visitor agencies are all planning on.
Thank you, Representative Drummond.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm gonna jump in and I'm sorry to cut you off.
Okay,
but
good.
wanna
I
keep
know I
us
could talk
rolling.
about it for hours. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, that's a big topic, but I appreciate you both for sharing updates. And I'm going to keep us rolling so that we can cover our brief reports for local issues. And these 5-minute updates include questions. So it's up to the people presenting to factor that in. I'm not seeing Assemblymember Cameron Presverdia, but I do see Judy Jessen, our Assembly staff member. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Judy.
Hi, thank you for having me. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for having me. I know I'm not Cameron, but I try to be an adequate sub. Cameron apologizes he wasn't able to make it. He got tied up in meetings. I am, though, very good at the 5-minute update. So here we go. We have one more town hall about how the local government should use the American Rescue Plan funds. There was a town hall last Friday to talk about what that next wave of funding looks like. It included a survey of how people would like to see the money used this time around. I still am trying to track down the results from that survey, but you need not wait on me because another similar town hall will take place Friday, this coming Friday, April 9th at 5:00 p.m. You can show up in person to participate at the library. I cannot remember which of the auditoriums it's in, although I think it's in the Assembly chambers. Either way, it'll be on the first floor, and I'm sure you won't be able to miss it. It's also going to be streaming on GCI Channel 9 and on the YouTube channel, which I'll send a link to in the chat to be passed through. The survey will be conducted electronically, so people who participate at home for this upcoming forum will still be able to participate. You also need not wait on that specific survey. You can submit your ideas anytime about how to use the money using a different link that I will post in the chat. For vaccine updates, new clinics are being added every day. The best place to get Anchorage vaccine updates is by following the Anchorage Office of Emergency Management on Facebook, if you have that. There's a really cool clinic that's popped up at the Diamond Center. They're still putting on drive-through clinics at the Dempsey Anderson, and they're still working with local churches to try and really get people where they are. I will drop the link to secure your appointment if you're looking for an appointment-based event still to get your shot. Remember that people under the age of 18 can only get the Pfizer shot. So when you're making appointments for minors that you care about, you want to check and make sure you're making it at a clinic that's giving Pfizer. We had election updates on there. Hopefully you all voted. I know we can count on you. Ballots are being counted every day. They're dropping one update on the election per day at the end of the count, which is the end of the working day. So after 5 p.m. And I will send over a number that you can text to get a text notification every time election updates, or every time those numbers are refreshed. That's what I have. Did I crush it? Did I get it in under 5? Yeah, I did.
Yes, thanks, Judy. I didn't see any questions come in. So I think we can go ahead and move on. I've been searching the list for Star Marset. Is Star here, our school board representative? Don't think so. So instead, I'll move us over to John Johansson, our airport representative. Is John here? I don't see him either. Okay, I do see Officer Reed with the Anchorage Police Department. Hi, Officer Reed, welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. How are you doing tonight?
Good, thanks.
I don't have much to brief this evening. I'm more here for questions. If anyone of the assembly has any questions for me, anything I can brief or issues that you're having that I can talk about. I can briefly talk about what we've been doing the last few months in Spenard and where our focus has been, if that's something everyone is interested in. I have some statistics from early in the year back in January. So some of our primary concerns with Spenard is we've seen a lot of issues with eluding vehicles and drug houses. So the mass focus for us in the last 2 months, we've done, I think, 3 search warrants. One of them we netted quite a large amount of spice from one of the homes there, and we're moving forward that case and been forward to the proper authorities, the federal side of it. And we're also moving forward with other issues we have more on the east side of Spenard that we're dealing with that. I know there's been some complaints of speeders on the main road of Spenard, pretty much where Minnesota is at, up to, I think it was Wisconsin. So when we have time, we're making sure we have officers there. One of my primary things that I've been doing when I have time is I know that we have a lot of issues with just some petty thefts that have been going on at the gas stations, brown jugs, marijuana shops. So one of my big primary concerns is I've been going in, if time allows, every day to talk to those individuals, get to know them by name. And that way we just present a presence for them there. So that way everyone committing these petty thefts can realize we're out and about, we're active, we're trying to be there for them. I do have some older statistics, just a breakdown of what our calls for service look like. If you're interested, I can read those off, but otherwise I'm just open for questions today. Anyone has any questions for me?
Yeah, some statistics from this year would be great.
Okay, so the statistics I have are going to be from January of 2021. So it looks like the big thing that we have is our top calls for service locations. A lot of them tend to be hotels that are on the east side of, the west side of Spenard. Usually they're 4360 Spenard Road. And the majority of what we deal with are mainly going to be disturbances, traffic stops, and trespassing issues. A lot of what we do see, a lot of them we do really encourage everyone to call in is when you see a suspicious vehicle. It's about 4th on our list for most common that we see. And the importance of calling in for those suspicious vehicles is that it allows us to make contact with a person, because sometimes people see a suspicious vehicle and think, maybe I should call, maybe I shouldn't. What that does, though, it gives us probable cause to talk to that person. And sometimes what that can lead into is warrant arrest, drug interdiction, and all those things can lead into a lot bigger issues. So I do urge you, if you do see something on your street that you think is just a little off, please give us a call. We're more than willing to come out if time allows, depending on what calls are happening at the time, to try to talk to them. Let me refer back to the stats page real quick. Our main calls for service hours, that looks like that we receive the most calls for service is usually between about 6 o'clock at night to about 11 o'clock in the evening. And that usually drops off right after there. So that's normally our busiest hours. And it's also when our shifts usually make that transition. I'm a swing shift officer, so I work from 3 in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the evening. So as mid shift is coming on and we're leaving the streets, that's when it tends to slow down a little bit. It picks up right near the end of our shift.
Great.
And then it looks like the majority of the incidents that we deal with, there's a decent amount of reports that do follow up. But a lot of them are just smaller issues. I can see there's a large number of calls that are just cleared. What it means is if we have a prowler call, someone's in the area, we clear, talk to them. And there's a few hundred of those. About in the month of January, there was 446 calls that were just cleared from status, so no reports to follow. But what that also can mean is that when we talk to the person, we log them to the call, we get that contact with that person, and it can help us bridge those issues. So if we have a chronic trespasser at one store and we keep logging and talking to that one party, their name gets brought up in all those instances, and we can actually track what's going on with them, which is quite helpful. Do you have any other questions for me?
Yeah, thank you. And folks can feel free to put questions into the chat box. You can raise your hand or you can just wave or unmute, but I see Tawny in the queue. So Tawny, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to check in because the address you listed, the 4360 Spenard Road, so that's the America's Best Value Inn and Suites. And what I wanted to check in was, what is APD doing about the ongoing issues with drug dealers that operate out of both that hotel or motel and then also the Chelsea Inn Hotel along Spenard? Because those are pretty longstanding issues that just don't seem to go away. And I know you're talking about trespassers, but I'd really love to know what you guys are doing about those drug dealers in those hotels.
So you bring up 2 hotels. I can kind of talk more in general. Chelsea Inn, as I've been to multiple times, been there for quite a few calls for service. When the Barrett was open, I was there quite a lot. What we do have is I don't know if you're familiar with the community action policing team. There are CAP teams, and we have CAP 1 and CAP 2 team. CAP 1 team handles more drug interdiction, and what they'll do is they have UC cars, which are undercover vehicles, and they'll be set up with our vice teams doing buy busts. So they'll be finding lower level drug dealers, purchasing a amount of drugs from them, and then having them work a case and leading them to larger drug houses. Because usually hotels, again, just from my personal experience, aren't the largest spots where we find the most drugs, but it's where we find a lot of smaller time drug dealers that we can then track and get us into these houses. That's how we got with one of our most recent houses that we did the search warrant for, and ended up getting a large portion of those drugs and was turned over to a federal case. So for the hotels in general, what we try to do the most of is officers, whenever we have time, whenever we have that free time on shift, to make that happen. Because what we constantly have to combat on our shift is we have the highest call volume. So generally speaking, when we start the shift, there's anywhere from 300 to 400 calls that have already occurred earlier in that day. And by the time we end our shift in those 10 hours, we're usually looking at around 700 to 800 calls have been added to that. So we're constantly answering calls. So it's a matter of as soon as we're available for service, we're usually getting something else. But when we have that time and ability to go to a different call, my personal goal is we go talk to the hotel staff. We ask them what rooms are causing troubles for them. We check all the registrations for the vehicles in the parking lot. If we find something that we think we can get something out of, we wait for that vehicle to be on the move. We go try to do what we call knock and talks at the hotel rooms, try to talk to those individuals and work through that process. Does that make a little sense?
Great, yeah, thank you. We have one question from the chat from Ted Matson. If you have any information on the status of the mobile crisis intervention team.
Oh, the mobile CIT team. So I have a small bit of information. Chat, so I can see a little more. So if I understand his question, we do have CIT rated officers on shift at all time. And when we have the ability and the staffing, what we'll have is they are a CIT specific officer. So if they hear a call that involves a mental crisis, what happens, that officer will attach themselves to the call and start handling it. And then generally speaking, it's more on day shift hours, is they have a cooperative approach where they have a mental health worker with CIT1, which is Ruth Adolph, and they'll respond to those calls that are more perpetual. They're ones that are constant, really reoccurring, and they can build that rapport with that person, help them work through that program. And I think, again, I haven't talked to Ruth personally a lot about it. Their goal is to roll that platform out more and more, and to allow more mental health professionals to handle those calls. The issue that we run into, and what our concern is we don't want to be placing someone in risk of injury for situations, because they can go from a fairly compliant person to upset pretty quick. So I think right now they're trying it with the dual approach with officer and a social worker in a car. And then we're rolling out as much as we can is more officers that are CIT rated with crisis intervention team on shift and specifically assigned to handle those calls. If we're lucky, depending on the call stack, we could have 1 or 2 on shift, 1 for a north sector and 1 for south, and they listen for those calls and jump in when they can. Does that adequately answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We have one more question from George Ascott. I'll turn it over to George.
Oh, thank you, officer. I was wondering, did you say that there's been petty thefts at marijuana shops?
Could you speak up? My camera and radio is just not that great in here.
I thought you said there were petty thefts at marijuana shops.
So the majority of petty thefts that I've personally seen are going to be more at the brown jugs. There's one that's brown jug and the marijuana shop. I think it's right off Greenland and Spenard. I've talked to the owners there, and I'm trying to get talking with him, but again, it's the hours of operation don't really work for me to go talk to the owner. So I talked to some of the other employees, and they said they haven't seen too many at the marijuana shops. Where I see the most petty thefts are gas stations and brown jugs, just the nature of what they sell. And for the most part, the marijuana shops have had a pretty good success rate, is my understanding. But again, right now, what I'm focusing on, because I've seen the most, is the alcohol shops and the gas stations, the one that I'm focusing on right now.
Okay, well, you have to show your ID to get into the marijuana shop, as far as I'm sure. So I don't know how you'd be having thefts in the shop if you show your ID to get in.
I talked to one of the shops, and one of the issues they had is a person was in there and he tried to grab the tip jar and just run out the door. So stuff like that. So he showed his ID, walked past him. When he was talking to staff, he tried to grab the tip jar and run. Huh. So he obviously got in there because he showed his ID, proper identification, but sometimes people try to do stuff and just get out. A lot of issues, what I could see, I'm not saying this has happened, what I could see someone doing is presenting a false ID that's close enough to the person so they can try to get away with that, because unfortunately there is that does occur. Does that answer the question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions. Last call, any?
I had a question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Jared.
Hey, thanks. So, officers are responding to calls that might be mental health, a person with mental health issues, with crisis intervention trained persons. Is that the plan long term, to have officers continue to accompany them to those calls, or will eventually officers be crisis intervention, I guess, trained or to do that on their own, or will eventually people respond to those without officers? Or is it, I don't know what the long term, I'm just kind of curious what the long term goal is of that.
That's a good question. I haven't talked to Miss Adolph. She's the one that's running the program. I don't know what their long-term goal is, if they're going to start getting more mental health certified professionals with officers, or their goal is to phase us out. I'm not sure what their long-term goal is. I know it's kind of like a pilot program right now. They're trying to figure out what it is. It's, it's like driving stick shift. You're having to play with the clutch and the pedal at the same time, finding the right. Too much of one is good, too much isn't good, and too much of the other isn't good. So I can't speak to their long-term plan as of now, but I can try to talk to Miss Adolph and follow up if I'm assigned to the next community council meeting, get that answer better for you.
Okay, yep, I was just curious. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, we appreciate your time, Officer Reed. I think we're good there.
All right, sounds good.
And hopefully we'll see you in a month. Thanks for
Quite
taking
possibly.
time out of your shift. Yeah,
No problem. I'm gonna go answer some calls. You all have a safe day.
thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Great, I'm still not seeing John Johansson or Star Marset for our school board or airport updates. I did share in the chat, just referring back to our website where I do post a lot of updates, including the airport update. So we'll just keep moving ahead so that we can spend more time in conversation today. So our next topic is going to be about the COVID-19 vaccine. This is a presentation the Department of Health and Social Services through the state is sharing through different community councils, and we've had quite a bit of discussion in our council meetings. So we wanted to invite Tony, and I believe he may have somebody else with him to share more on this. And we've got about 15 minutes for this. So thank you and welcome, Tony.
Hi, so this is
there you go,
Lisa Rabinowitz. I'm not sure if Tony's on or not. He's kind of my babysitter. He keeps the tech stuff rolling. So
I
hey,
just saw
Spenard.
him and
So I'm an emergency physician and I've been at PROV for 19 years, and in October started helping the state public health COVID-19 task force. So I've been very enmeshed in the whole vaccine world. So we're just going to do a quick PowerPoint presentation, just kind of run through. And then really the most information that gets shared is really in the question and answer. And I know time's tight, so 15 minutes, we'll make it happen. So let me just share this with you. Can everybody see that?
yes,
Okay, perfect.
or actually, yeah, go to slideshow view.
Okay,
Perfect.
cool. So, and many of you have already had your vaccine. So hearing this information is okay though, because you can talk to your friends and neighbors that are still feeling hesitant about it. So I think all information is good. So as most of you know, we have 3 vaccines available now. It's pretty exciting because I can sit up here and say they're all very safe and very effective. And especially in the vaccine world, the efficacy rates on these vaccines are pretty amazing. We'll kind of talk about allergic reactions a little bit, but they're real. And that's one of the real risks to these vaccines. They're on the order of 2 to 5 per million, depending on which brand of vaccine. We had some of the first cases in the United States happen here in Alaska. So people are well aware of those. We'll move on to the next slide. So one of the questions we get a lot is, are these vaccines safe? How did it happen so quickly? And they didn't skip any of the safety hoops that they had to jump through. Everything happened quick because of kind of more logistics, and we'll talk about that next, but every one of these drugs went through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We're now in phase 4, where there's hundreds of millions of doses that have been given worldwide, and over, I think, 140 million here in the US. So we're getting lots of data in, and there's been no new safety concerns, which is great. This is kind of how did it happen so fast? There's really 4 reasons. They were already working on all this mRNA vaccine for SARS and MERS. They had it all ready to go. SARS and MERS kind of died out. And so all this mechanism, all this science was just sitting there. Usually with trials, we have to enroll them and it takes months and months and months. With these vaccines, people wanted to try them, wanted to get it going, so they enrolled really quickly, which helps speed things along. The US and other governments kind of subsidize these drug companies, so that also helped move things along. And then this was the only time this has been done. While they were going through all the trials, they were also manufacturing the drug. So if it did turn out that they were safe and effective, they had drug to roll out right away. Safety, we're still talking about that because it's a big concern. So V-Safe is kind of a self app that after you get vaccinated, you can report your symptoms. And so another way that we can collect safety data. Important in pregnant women, there's over 67,000 pregnant women that got vaccinated that we have the data on, and again, no issues with them. And then VAERS, the acronym on the bottom, is where any adverse event gets reported. So around vaccine time, even if somebody passes out getting the vaccine and they've done it every time they get a flu shot, we're still reporting it because this is how we're going to catch anything that could come out of millions and millions of doses. This is just to remind us the vaccines are the key to getting out of this pandemic, but we can't let our guard down on the other things that we have been using. So in large gatherings, we're still masking, social distancing, hand washing, and don't forget about testing when you do have symptoms. So these are our 3 vaccines, and I saw somebody put some information in the chat box earlier, but we've got Pfizer, and that's 2 doses, 21 days apart. That's okayed for ages 16 and older. So these teenagers are really clamoring for these Pfizer slots on the vaccination site. Moderna is also 2 doses, 28 days apart, 18 and older. And then the Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine is 18 and older, and that's the 1 shot. General side effects, and your friends that have had this can attest to it. One of the most common ones are pain and swelling in the injection site. And we know that with Moderna, about a week after your injection, people are seeing more pain and swelling kind of come back to that area. Low-grade fevers, fatigue, headache, muscle aches, chills are all very common. These usually last about 1 to 3 days, and it's kind of your immune system revving up to do the job that we've asked it to do. Talking about immunity, you're considered fully immune 2 weeks or 14 days after your last dose. So after your 2nd dose for your mRNA vaccines or your dose of Johnson & Johnson. This becomes important as we've kind of relaxed the CDC is relaxing some quarantine and other issues. But remember, you're not fully protected. The other thing I like to remind people is even after 2 weeks, that efficacy rate keeps going up. So especially for Johnson & Johnson, 28 days, no hospitalizations, 48, 49 days, no cases at all, not even serologically. So this efficacy keeps going up. We kind of touched on this a little bit. I won't go into the details, but new guidance on travel and that you can get together inside with another household with vaccinated people without a mask. So this is when we start talking about, hugging grandparents, getting together to have dinner with our friends. Pregnancy and breastfeeding is a really big issue in the vaccine world. So I want to just take a minute and touch on this. So when the drug companies roll out the trials, children and pregnant women are excluded from the trials. We like to do those 2nd tier after we've had adults get vaccinated. However, having said that, in all 3 of these vaccine trials, there were a fair number of women who ended up getting pregnant during the trial. So we have some data from that. And then I mentioned the V-Safe data. We have 67,000 women that entered their data, got pregnant, and there have been no new safety concerns for that. The World Health Organization, CDC, all the major fertility and OBGYN societies have come out saying, we think that it's safe to get the vaccine. We encourage you to do it. we recommend speaking with your trusted health professional, your OB or family practice doctors. There's been some new data that's come out just in the last week. We had some little trials out of Israel, and this week there was a large trial from Mass General where they had 131 women that all got vaccinated when they were pregnant. When they delivered, the babies all had the protective antibodies, and the breast milk also had the protective antibodies. So very exciting, because we can actually protect these infants who have pretty young immune systems when they're born and kind of reliant on mom's immune system. So that's pretty exciting to us. So this is just to remind us, like, getting immunized is good for yourself, but we're really trying to stop the transmission of this disease. And even more important now that we have variants out there, there's people that can't get vaccinated for specific reasons. There's also this whole group of children 16 and under that can't get vaccinated. So if we're really trying to get that herd immunity, 70 to 80% plus, we really need to step up and start getting vaccinated so we can get our rates higher and stop it from transmitting around. So people ask, which one should I get? It's really the first one you can get an appointment for or you're offered, because they're all very safe and effective, especially at preventing serious illness, hospitalization, and death. And the CDC doesn't have one preference for any of the vaccines for one demographic group or age group. And they did trials in all, yeah, Amber, you have a question?
Gosh, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to wait until you were all done speaking. I was just getting in line.
Okay, perfect. We'll hit you first then. I'm almost done.
No rush. Thank you so much.
What I was going to say is all three of the trials did have American Indian and Alaska Native participants in the original clinical trials. So we know that they're also effective for our Native populations. Here's the appointment, and somebody nicely put that in the chat box. If anyone's gotten on this website, it's pretty clunky. I'm not saying it mildly. It's a very difficult website. They kind of made little improvements, but it's still cumbersome. So there's a 907 number to call. You get a live person at 7 days a week, and also an 800 number if you're having difficulty, or you have someone who's homebound, can't get to an appointment. There's ways in the Muni where they can send out a strike team to help. Some resources, and Amber, you're up. Let's go to questions.
Oh, excuse me, Blake, I'm on the phone. Sorry, I'm multitasking, parenting, and all of the things. So my question is, this vaccine is still under emergency authorization only. And so that's a question. And my second question is, because of that, my impression is a lot of the long-term studies have been they haven't been done because there isn't a long-term yet. So I'm just curious how that plays into everything.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, Amber. These are all under FDA emergency use authorization, just because of what you said. We don't have the long-term data yet. They haven't been around long enough. So again, in the millions of doses we've seen, no new concerns, but it hasn't been out for 2 and 3 years. And so that's why they're under the emergency use authorization. So you're correct on that. And Tani, you had a question?
Yeah, I did actually. I was just having this conversation with my brother this evening. I'm vaccinated, fully vaccinated. He and his fiance aren't. And he was curious why I was still wearing a mask when I was in his house, which I said I was going to do until he got vaccinated. It was a whole conversation, but I was wondering if you could talk about what the risks are for either side when it comes to being in close proximity with people who have that split between where somebody's vaccinated and somebody isn't.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that because a lot of families have children that haven't been vaccinated yet. So it's really that risk that these vaccines are great. They're 95-ish effective, but that means there's 5% of people that can still get COVID. The goal of these vaccines is really to prevent people from having severe symptoms, hospitalization, and death, which they're very good at. But you can still get it, and we're getting more and more data on how much you can transmit it once you get it after you've been vaccinated, but potentially you could still spread it. So you go from your brother's house, you go see your elderly parents that are at higher risk. There is potential there. So everyone has to kind of weigh those risks as you're in these situations, because it can happen, right? So great question.
Great, thanks, Lisa. We did have a question come in the chat from Ted. If you can just share a recommendation about getting the shot in your dominant versus your non-dominant arm.
Great question. So when I got my first one, and this is not scientific, I got it in my non-dominant hand because I'm an ER doc. I figure I need my hand. But then I didn't know what to do for the second dose. I was like, should I get it in the same arm? I ended up going with the opposite arm. So I didn't have a double immune reaction in that same arm. So not scientific. There's no data out for that, but that's how I did it.
Great, thank you. And then there's one more question from Tani. Does the current vaccine also protect against the current COVID variants?
Yeah, so great question. More and more data on that. They are protective. We know that they're all probably a little less protective than they are for that original COVID. We know that especially the South Africa variant, there definitely had decreased efficacy in the lab. So that's why the state is sequencing all these positives right now, or if there's breakthrough cases, someone that's been vaccinated and does get it, they're watching this really closely.
Great, thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat. We have a couple more minutes. Is there a question from the audience?
Anything, guys?
Sarah,
Yeah, Sarah.
welcome.
Thanks. Will this presentation be available elsewhere if I wanted to, say, give it to loved ones who needed this information?
Yeah, totally. And we'll actually send it to, I can send it to Lindsay when we're done with the presentation. My Tony or whoever's on here in my place of Tony will do that.
Yeah, Dr.
There he
Rubin,
is.
so hi. So I'll provide a copy of the PowerPoint as well as some additional resources that you're able to share with your friends, family, or if you have organizations or groups that would be interested in receiving this presentation, we have a group of doctors that are all available to provide presentations to organizations for communities or for workplaces, whoever is interested in receiving it.
Perfect. Hi, Bob and Peg.
Hi, my question is, does the state have any idea of how many cases of the variants have shown up in our state as of yet?
Yeah, it's I think the number that I heard, and I may be wrong, was 42 this week. It was 28 a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I think there was I know there was a bit of a delay. They ran out of reagent. They were sequencing so many, but they had the reagent back this week. So hopefully we'll see what's coming out this week, because the concern is, as our cases are kind of going up again, is this variant related?
Can I follow that up?
Yeah.
Is there any specific places in the state that they're showing up, the variants? Is it in the heavily populated, or is it spread around?
Well, it's been in more population centers right now, probably just a numbers game. And the most recent ones have not been travel related, which does indicate that we might have some transmission in the community.
Thank you.
Paul.
Oh, hello. Great presentation. Had a question regarding the Johnson & Johnson versus the Moderna and the Pfizer.
Yeah.
As I understand, there's a different vector that Johnson & Johnson uses. Is that the case? And can you explain the differences between the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, totally. So think of it this way. The front half of how we get the recipe into the cell is different between the two groups. The back half of the process is the same. So with the mRNA vaccines, this is the new technology. Basically, they take a little piece of messenger RNA. It's basically like a recipe. it's enclosed in a lipid or a fat bubble, and that's how it gets into the cell. Then it goes to these ribosomes, makes the proteins that are really those spikes that we've all seen drawn on those things. And that's what prompts the immune system. For the Johnson & Johnson, it's a viral vector. So they take an adenovirus, that's just a common cold virus. They change that virus so it can't replicate inside you and it can't make you sick. But that's how they put the DNA sequence in that, and that's how it gets into your body. Having said that, none of this changes your DNA. None of the RNA or DNA gets incorporated into your own DNA, because that's a common misconception kind of out on the internet. It's just that that recipe gets in a different way for each of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was my understanding. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right path.
Yeah, you got it.
Great, thank you.
And Dr. Rabinowitz, there's another question from the chat about if we should expect or when we should expect booster shots for the vaccines, what that might look like.
Yeah, so the $1 million question, we don't know yet. We got information last week from Pfizer saying that 6 months out, we were still seeing great immunity in the original participants that had been vaccinated. And last night / this morning, Moderna came out with their 6 months saying it was looking good also, so still immune. We don't know how long it's going to last. Potentially 2 reasons we'll need boosters. One, if the immunity starts to wane, and the other thing is for the boosters. I mean, for the variant, sorry. And I do know that all 3 vaccine brands are currently in production for a booster for the variant. So I know that that's definitely a concern for everyone. My guess, and this is purely a guess, that a year and a half out, we're going to need boosters, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. These are great questions, you guys. Jared.
Hey, thanks. I'm kind of curious. Some people I know that have had COVID and recovered from it, and I'm assuming they still have antibodies, or still opting to get the vaccine. And how? So do antibodies, are those not going to protect you against a variant where the vaccine will? And I guess what's the difference there? Why would the vaccine protect you, I guess, against a variant and your antibodies not?
Yeah, so let me back up even a little bit further. And the reason that people that have already had the infection and have immunity or antibodies from that, the reason we still want them to get vaccinated is purely because vaccines are made so they offer longer protection than native immunity protection, and also have a higher immune response. So they check the antibodies right after getting vaccinated and after native infection, and it's a larger immune boost with these vaccines. You're exactly right that the other concern is the variants, and that these vaccines will offer better protection. It's kind of like the flu vaccine. They don't know exactly which one's going to come at us each year, so they kind of guess and kind of formulate a vaccine that can get them as best as we can. But the concern is that, or the hope is that they'll offer better protection. So we tell people that have had the infection, you need to at least wait until you're done with your acute infection out of isolation, and then you can go get your vaccine. You can wait up to 90 days because we know that after a natural infection like that, your antibodies and immune response is very protective for at least 90 days. After that, it starts to go down.
Okay, it's more robust, I guess, a protection with the, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's the right
Thank
word.
you.
I'm going to use that from now on. Yeah, hi, Irene. I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you so much, Dr. Rabinowitz. This is great. I just wanted to share kind of a little funny story. I right now am a substitute teacher in biology, and I am pulling in as much current information as possible to the class. This is Biology 100, high school at Bartlett. And in order to explain this, because I have a background in home economics, I have used that recipe analogy to talk about the DNA and, the different aspects of the, replication. And it really seems to help and sink in. So I'm like, oh my God, an actual doctor with perfect training used a similar analogy. So I just have to let you know that. That's really cool.
No, that's great. And now I just need to really learn how to cook because I can't cook at all.
No, I don't either. My husband's cooking, so don't worry about it. Thank you.
Well, I greatly appreciate you guys having me. And again, I will put my email in the chat box. So if anyone has questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to me. Like Tony said, if you guys see a need in the community or different diverse groups that we're just not reaching, reach out to us because we love to talk about vaccines. And so, yeah, thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the follow-up too that we can share out to the group. Excellent. All right, so moving us forward, I wanted to introduce a topic for us tonight, capital improvement program. And I'm going to include in the chat a link, and that's a survey link that we're going to be asking you to help fill out. So I'm going to share my screen and just briefly talk a little bit about this. Basically, every year we have the opportunity to prioritize capital projects in our community council. Every council does it. And these are roadway projects, sidewalk projects, trails, and parks. And we've been doing this for years. This is a big function of having a community council. And we have our 2021 list posted on our website. And it just goes over what projects we as a council have prioritized as most important in our community. And eventually this informs the municipality's process of creating a 5-year capital improvement program. And that's how we get funding for these projects. So the higher priority for the longer, the more likely we are to actually get this project funded and eventually improved further down the road. So these are big numbers because they're capital projects. And some of the projects we have more description than others. Some of this is in working with the municipality, the Department of Transportation, and Parks and Recreation to actually fill out these details. But it's really up to us to pick out which projects are most important to us. So the link that I just put into the chat goes to this survey. And we're asking all community council members, so if you live within our district, have a business within our district, please fill this out. We have all these projects listed and we want to hear from you about how much of a priority is this. Is it a project that isn't really needed and we can take it off of our list? Or is it something that has become the most important project because maybe something has changed over the year and we need to elevate it on our list? So this is a process that we started last year because we usually have this in person on paper and it's kind of confusing. So this is our attempt to try to make it so that it's an online form that you can then decide lowest drive, very important, lowest drive updates for this section, not needed. Whatever you want it to say, you can fill that out. We also have a section at the bottom for any projects that aren't included in the list that you want to see included. The more folks we have list them out, we'll add in there, but we'll also talk to an executive board about which projects to add, because we will bring a resolution forward we'll bring a document forward in our next meeting in May so that we can adopt this. The priority list so that we have our 2022 capital improvement projects. And that is my very short description of it. Any executive board member want to share, or do we have any questions from the group about that? We all live and walk around and drive and walk our dogs on these projects. And so it is really important that we just continue to get information in on time and then elevate this within the municipality. Peggy and Bob.
Yes, hi, Lindsay. Could you put a link to the explanatory section that you pulled up first into the chat box so people that aren't familiar what exactly these are, people that have been coming for a while are pretty familiar because we brought them up, but if someone's new and they don't know what exactly where this is or what kind of project, I think that description that you pulled up first would be really helpful to go through.
Yes, I'm going to put that into the chat. It's on our other documents page. It's just the 4th one on the list. And so it is there, and we will send this out in an email to all of our Spenard members, because we're hoping to have you fill the survey out by the end of this month so that we can have the priorities ready to go for our May meeting. Thanks, Peggy. And then I do see a question in the chat from Alex about Chugach Way road improvements. Some of these projects on our list you will see have some funding currently or are moving forward in some stage, but are not fully complete. So one example is the Spenard Road Rehabilitation Project we've talked about. That's from Spenard, from Benson all the way to Minnesota. That's been on our priority list for a long time as like number 1 or 2. And so it's finally getting some funded. It's going to need to be funded over many years. And so it's still on our list. Uri Park is another project that's on there. It was on the bond yesterday when we all voted, and it was on the bond last year, and it's almost done, but it's not quite. So we just are keeping it on the list until we can like put a real checkbox next to it. So some of these projects you'll see are starting to get funding. Some of them have been on our list for a long time and have not been funded, so maybe we need to elevate them. Any other questions? Okay, with that, I'm going to move us into the next topic around the proposed Title 21 amendments. And so this was a project we had a member of the planning department present to us at our December meeting, and it was to provide information to us because it seemed like a technical issue, and we wanted to bring as much information forward to the group. And in that discussion, we said, if we want to take action on this in the future, we can, but at that point, we just wanted information. It was a proposed Title 21 amendment to allow for conditional use within business districts for homeless or transient shelters. And that conditional use is one of the highest standards we have in the municipality, but it would open up the potential for homeless or transient shelters to be within business districts, so along Spenard Road, for example, and along many of the other areas in town that you think of with businesses along them. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul to introduce his resolution, share some information about it, and we can have a discussion on it. And we do have a Google form that we'll put in the chat box as well to vote on it once we're ready for that. So I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. I haven't done this before. I'm assuming the protocol is to read the resolution first.
Oh, I can actually share it on my screen if you want to just share more about what your feelings on it are and reasons you wanted to bring it forward.
Yeah, if you would share that, that'd be awesome, because it's kind of dull to read.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, oh, there you go. I own the Carousel Lounge, and I resided in Spenard for a long time, over on 33rd, and then over by West High, right nearby. And I've been witnessing firsthand, our community, what's going on. A lot of the things that the officer alluded to earlier, I deal with myself on a daily basis, and I'm concerned about the community. So I've also had to go through all the proper processes as a business owner to meet Title 21 standards. I've been through the conditional use process for the bar. It's demanding, but not as demanding as what shelters should have to go through. So I brought this forward. I asked Dr. Biggs to come by today. He's much more of an expert on this than I am, but I wanted to share with you why it was important to me. I'm concerned about, there's a lot of folks in the street now that are in danger in the wintertime, driving wise, and getting hurt and injured. I'm concerned we put more people on these corners, it's going to be worse for them and worse for the drivers that have to interact with them. I'm very concerned about the petty crime, disturbances, trespassing, et cetera, which I believe would increase if we allow B3 zoning to be used for this use. And I have a feeling it kind of feels to me like downtown is trying to push their problems over into our neighborhoods. And so those were a couple of the reasons that got me motivated to bring this forward, but I want to introduce Dr. Biggs, if that's possible, and let him answer questions and maybe give a brief statement about why he's kind of spearheading this amongst the community councils. He's the vice president of the Tudor Area Council, and is quite up to date on this topic. Dr. Biggs, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Lindsay, can I have like 3 to 5 minutes to chat about this? Is that okay?
How about 2 to 3 so that
Okay.
we can have questions?
Sure. Yeah. So this basically is going to affect about 3,900 B3 zone properties in the municipality. And the reason I think it's important, my wife and I have supported the Downtown Hope Center for over 10 years. And the homeless shelters in these areas, historically, you know, Brother Francis and also the Downtown Hope Center have been basically a source of a lot of problems for the community, given the number of emergency calls. In 2017, the Brother Francis Shelter had over 8 calls a day for an entire year, 2,400 calls. And the text of this language is important because the fact that the conditional use process is being placed before the community is overlooking the fact that this ability to put shelters in pretty much any zone district is already available, and it requires a rezoning, and that's been historically done. The way it's typically happened in the PLI zone districts, when they are, sorry, in the not PLI zone districts, when they wanted to place a shelter, the shelter operators went through the process of rezoning, and that's one step higher level of public engagement before it goes to the conditional use permitting process. Obviously, I think a lot of property owners feel that the most restricted land use, which is the shelters, deserves a higher standard of community outreach. Our community in Tudor area was concerned because the attending members of the PLZ committee presented this to less than 65 of the community councils when they started their outreach in November. And as far as I know, none of the actual 3,900 property owners this would affect received that presentation directly through mailing or anything like that. And so that's causing a major concern. And, you know, in that meeting, we had approximately, I would say less than 20 public comments. And part of those comments were that there was a major concern that the municipality did not do the appropriate outreach and that the public did not understand. And once that passed, it became more obvious because we just in the Midtown area have now gathered about 700 99.9% oppositional comments to this plan, again, because of the disruption that it causes and the need to have a higher standard of community outreach. It doesn't prevent shelters being placed in any of these properties, but it does require another level, I think appropriate level, of public outreach that would not occur with the conditional use permit. So that's kind of the short part of it. I'm happy to answer some of the questions. I'm possibly not the most expert on this, but I've had a little bit of chance to study it.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So hopefully folks have been able to read this or can find it easily on our website. But I think we've had the formality of Paul introducing it. And so I think I need to ask for a second and then we can have a discussion and then we can continue from there. So Paul has introduced it. Can we have a second?
I'll second it, Lindsay.
Jared is seconding it. Okay, thank you. So we'll go with Tawny and then over to Matt and Margaret.
Yeah, thanks. And can you share your screen again with the resolution?
I can.
So just for also context, I do work for the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, but I am speaking in my own personal standpoint today. The reason I say that is because I've now seen this presentation from the Planning and Zoning Commission 3 different times, and I've had a chance to ask a number of questions to kind of understand it. And I was reading through your resolution, Paul, and I had some issues with some of the language that you put in here is not really accurate to the issues that are kind of being presented. For instance, when you say many of the current businesses are zoned within close proximity to residential neighborhoods, I mean, that's pretty much a pretty general statement that could be applicable throughout the city, because that's how zoning works, is that you have a residential district and eventually you get to the houses. And the other thing that there were, there were 4 of them, but I'm going to try and be quick. The other issue I had, kind of based on my multiple presentations I've been to, and then my own understanding from my own work, is that you say that the zoning laws provide for placement of these facilities with well within 100 acres of pre-existing PLI zoned properties. But that's actually not true, because much of the zoning, the PLI properties are already dedicated parkland. And in this, there's a presentation that I can share the link to, but they actually go with a picture and show you the PLI zoning areas, and then they take out anywhere that's already dedicated. And it's really, really limited where essentially you could put shelters now. And so, you know, this idea that it feels like downtown is pushing this onto us, well, this is an Anchorage issue that has unfortunately been a downtown problem for so very long. And one of the reasons it got so big and bad was because there wasn't enough shelters for people to go to. We couldn't send the cops there, and we couldn't send people there to say, hey, move along, because there was nowhere to go. So either they moved along or they went into the green belt or the trail system. So this idea about spreading shelters across the city, people are homeless or experiencing homelessness and they're transient across our city. This makes it really easy for them to access services. And being near businesses is also really important if you think of the businesses that serve those folks. We're not businesses that are hiding out in neighborhoods. You know, they're medical professionals, there's counselors, there's drug and, you know, therapy and things like that. So for me personally, as a community council member for many years, I fully support, I oppose your resolution, and I fully support this B3 zoning amendment to Title 21, because it's going to make our city better for everyone across, and share it with every single neighborhood, and just make us a better city. So I'm sorry I took up so much time. Let's see. I will put myself on mute.
Thank you, Tawny. And I'm going to move us through in the order that I see people's comments or questions in the chat. So we'll go to Matt and Margaret, then Ted Madsen, Jared Dunbar, Michelle Wilbur, and I'll keep that running list going. But over to you, Matt and Margaret.
Hello. I think I posed this as well. There's some language that was used in the explanation of it that is kind of offensive. These people are not these people. There are housing insecure neighbors, and they're our problem. And they're our problem here in Spenard, downtown, South Addition, South Anchorage, East Side. They're here. They're not being pushed out of downtown to here. They're already here. They're camping in my neighborhood all the time. The whole idea that not in my backyard is offensive. Why should downtown shoulder the burden of our citizens not having the services and the housing that they need to keep them safe and to help them lift themselves out of the dire situations that they're in? The people that I have dealt with here in my neighborhood are not just housing insecure. They are mentally ill. They are severely addicted to powerful drugs that greatly disable them and make it impossible for them to care for themselves in any way that is reasonable. And the idea that we need to come together as an entire city to address this epidemic is much more appealing than saying we should oppose spending money on our neighbors that are in such dire straits. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to Ted Madsen.
Hey, good evening. My name is Ted Madsen. I live on Lois Drive. I've never, unfortunately, been to a Spenard Community Council meeting. However, I've lived in the neighborhood since 2015 at various locations. including behind the Franz Bakery and over by Beartooth. And now I'm on currently Lois Drive. My professional obligations at my previous work prevented me from attending this community council every month. I would just like to echo the comments of Tawny and Matt. I really do oppose this resolution. It's not a downtown problem getting foisted on the rest of Anchorage. This is a citywide problem. This is a statewide problem. And really, it's not a problem because these folks are individuals. They are folks who don't have housing. They sleep rough on the streets or they sleep in shelters. And right now, would you rather have them sleeping on the streets, potentially on a curb or in a gutter or in a shelter nearby the services that they need to have? Now, I'm a committed Christian, and one of the fundamental tenets of my faith is to treat everyone with respect and dignity and with a sense of justice for what they're going through in their lives. And frankly, it's not an issue that we should be, shunting always to the industrial district of downtown, which just exacerbates the problems down there. This should be readily accessible shelters across the entire city, from downtown to the east side of Muldoon, to the west side here in Spenard, to South Anchorage. That's really what this is about, is that the folks who are really rich down in South Anchorage just don't want further shelters coming anywhere close to their neighborhoods. Sorry to get a little classist about things. But really, this resolution doesn't really, some of the things that are needed is, shelters can currently go on PLI zone lands. Yes, that's true. But if a business district, a B3 piece of property wants to sell and become a homeless shelter, that's fine. And there's still going to be conditional uses on it. There's still going to be massive amounts of public input that are going to have to be sought. I've previously attended numerous community councils on the east side where conditional use permits come up all the time. And so if some business, say on Spenard and Greenland, wants to have a homeless shelter there, there's still going to be conditional use input sought. And it can affect 3,500 property owners across the city. Well, yeah, of course it can. That's how many commercial pieces of property there are in the city. And it's not like every single one of those is going to turn into a homeless shelter. Maybe 5 do, maybe a dozen do. Who knows? There's a lot of homeless folks in Anchorage sleeping rough, and we need to take care of them. And this resolution does not address that issue. So thank you so much. I'm sorry to be so confrontational in my first community council meeting with Spenard. I'm a committed resident of the People's Republic of Spenard, and I love this neighborhood. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ted. I'm gonna try to gently ask people to wrap up by wave, but we have quite a few folks in line, so I just want to keep us moving forward. So we'll go to Jared, Michelle Wilbur, Amber Glasser, Sarah Prescott. I think it was then Grant, and then Phil. So Jared, go on.
Okay. Hi. So I got a couple of questions, I guess, so that can maybe help me understand this a little bit. And then real short, my background is when I was first out of high school, I rode the city bus, 2 buses to work and 2 buses home for almost 2 years. So I saw a lot of homeless people downtown, a lot of conversation with them, ran into them a lot. So I saw a lot of that. I had 2 brothers, my youngest brother, my oldest brother, that stayed in the Sullivan Arena all summer as they were out of work and due to COVID and stuff like that. So I do want to say that before I ask these 2 questions really quick, I was in another assembly or community council meeting because I have another property on the other side of town. They got pretty contentious as both people disagreed. And I think everyone here, I just want to point out, is concerned about the homeless. And I think sometimes if we disagree, some people give the impression that a person might not care as much as they do or something, but I think everybody here wants the same thing. So my 2 questions is, with why the change for the B3 zoning amendment, if that's what it's called, and is what they're intending to do, can it be accomplished without the change as Title 21 is currently written? I don't know if that's a question for Russell or Paul there, but is this something, are they trying to accomplish something that Title 21 already allows them to do?
Sorry, we didn't invite the planning department back because we did have them present in December on this. And so I believe the reason behind this is to think about other ways that we can locate homeless and transient shelters. And it came out of the process last summer when the municipality wanted to purchase those properties. they didn't do a lot of public engagement on any of those proposals. And so what the assembly heard and what the municipality, the planning department took on was to think about how could this be addressed in a public way through zoning, through the planning and zoning realm, instead of just, yeah, having these things pop up like that.
Can I do one last? I forgot to say, the other concern I have is that the homeless population is quadrupled over the last 6 years. So why are we looking at why, you know, we want to change zoning and then get more homeless shelters? And if the homeless shelters we have right now, whatever we're doing now is not working. If it's growing 4 and 5 times over the last 6 years. So if what we're doing is not working, is putting more of the same thing in more areas of the city really going to fix the problem, or is it just more of the same? So why aren't we more looking at why is what we currently have not working? Why is our homeless population growing, you know?
Thank you. I want to keep us rolling, and I'm going to try to keep us moving quickly, but we are going to go past 8:30. Surprise. So I'm going to go to Michelle, Amber, Sarah, Grant, Phil.
Lindsay, there was a question in there.
Yeah.
Jared did have a question.
Do you want to address?
Yeah, I think, Russell, you want to grab that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that historically this process has happened using the existing Title 21 process. There, and again, I don't want to get off on the part of that this is opposing any particular shelter being placed, but it protects the current property owners through the Title 21 process that's available, and that's been historically done, and it can be done again.
So what they're proposing to change to accomplish, they can already accomplish the way it's written now.
That's correct. That's been historically done.
Okay.
It's a different process. I want to make sure that we have Spenard residents be able to share in this discussion. So I'm going to go over to Michelle.
Hey, my name is Michelle Wilbur. I'm a resident and a multiplex owner at 30th and Spenard. And I will say that this proposal smacks of NIMBYism to me, and I would like to make it easier to come up with good solutions to house and help people. So I am opposed to this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Amber.
Thank you, Lindsay. I support this resolution, and just being a longtime Anchorage resident and someone who's grown up in Spenard, and especially I've been part of the homeless community before, and I can tell you that we don't need to focus on zoning. We need to focus on more inpatient treatment facilities. We need to focus on individual care and one-on-one conversations with individuals. And I know that what we've been doing has not been working, and I'm in support of this because I think zoning is the wrong answer to the solution for our problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. All right, well, I'm going to move us to Grant and then Phil. Grant, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I don't understand the complexities of zoning very much, but from what I understand, a homeless person has to make their way downtown at least once per day. There's a soup kitchen, there's some shelters, there's the transit center. I don't see why downtown can't be kind of the one-stop shop for getting yourself back on your feet. I have heard that Grub Steak Grub Steak auctions property is for sale. Why would we want to buy any other property besides that to help with the homeless population?
Okay, thank you, Grant. And Phil Isley, welcome.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good.
I've lived in Anchorage for 30 of the last 40 years, and I've seen quite a bit of the homeless problem. And I feel that the things they have in place right now should work fine. So I support this because I don't think we should make a change to streamline it. The biggest problem with the homeless is we've turned it into an industry, and a lot of people are making money off the homeless. And if you go to the meetings, the people that they bring out that were successful are the ones that hit rock bottom and knew that if they didn't change, they would die. And they changed. But by giving them everything for free, you steal their self-esteem, their self-respect, and their self-confidence. And it's called enabling, and they never hit rock bottom. And that costs us about 20 lives a year. And that's a sad price to pay when if we demanded something from the homeless for their benefits, they would begin to improve their self-esteem, their self-confidence, and they would start changing. But as long as we make everything easy for them, when they're closed, fed, and housed, and they're allowed to beg for money that they can spend on alcohol and drugs, we're just promoting the problem. And I understand homeless is important to have homes, and there's things in place for it. But the only thing that we're doing is making the problem larger. And all you have to do is go back and look through the years and see how it's grown. The more money that we pour into free stuff for the homeless, the more homeless we kill.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to, okay, Tani, you already spoke, so I am going to jump over you and try to give everyone a chance to speak. And I'm going to say that I'm going to go to Bob and Peggy, Judy, and then I'm going to throw it back to Paul and put the voting link into the chat so that we can keep moving us forward. But Bob and Peggy.
Thank you, Lindsay. I promise I'll make this short. One is that there is some misinformation in that they're no longer serving meals at Brother Francis. What they're doing is they bought a facility and they're packaging meals and they're taking the meals to the people. So that aspect is now gone for the person talking about the one-stop shop. The other thing is, I think that we have to think about how we would feel as the Fairview people have dealt with this for years, is they're saying, why are we absorbing all of society's problems? And if that was true for us here in Spenard, and sometimes we do say that, we say, sometimes we complain about the fact we have more cannabis shops, or that we have more than our share of liquor stores. So, I think in compassion to our fellow neighbors in this city, we should think about, is it fair to just say, this is our problem as a society and we're going to dump it on you and now you deal with it. And I think this is I'm not in favor of this resolution because I don't think it's fair to put all the problems into one area of town. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm going to go ahead to Judy and then back over to Paul.
Thanks, Lindsay. I stay clocked in until 8:30 and then I clock out, and we rely on the recordings for your meeting. So I'm speaking from a personal perspective. It's a wonky personal perspective to sit in. I'm not a Spenard resident and I don't feel comfortable weighing in on what people should or should not do as it relates to the resolution. I do want to say that I was homeless for several years after graduating high school. I think I always sort of had some sort of a couch to crash on, but it certainly wasn't safe, stable, or permanent housing. I had 4 jobs, but I developed a drinking problem. I mostly picked up by crashing on people's houses who also had drinking problems. And a family took me in not too far away from where the America's Best Value is. They opened their home to me. They fed me for free. They didn't place any restrictions about sobriety or curfew or anything like that. And from my perspective where I'm sitting now, they gave me a lot of things that a lot of people who are involved in this discussion about homelessness say that maybe people don't deserve unless they're meeting certain criteria. And I just wanted to share while we're having this conversation, how big a difference it made to me that people offered that help that I didn't deserve. I had been involved in things I would just never share with in public like that. But I can honestly say that I didn't deserve the help that I got, and it turned everything around for me. And now I'm a homeowner, beautiful family, an incredible partner, the cutest dogs in town, objectively speaking. And I'm buying a second home to accommodate my family that's grown twice the size as I'm trying to pay forward a little bit of what was done for me. So I just want to share that to encourage people to think about whether we really need to hold the penalty of death over someone's head when they're already struggling. And I just want to share that as a person who's been in that position, who received a ton of help and support that they didn't deserve, that's not the case.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Judy. And like I said, I'm going to put the form into the chat so you can look at the resolution, look at the form itself, fill that stuff out. But I wanted, Jared, I'm going to jump over you again and put it back to Paul, just so that we can wrap it back up and keep us rolling.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the dialogue and all the inputs. You know, I agree with Phil about folks getting to rock bottom and turning their lives around. I've been there myself at one point. I agree with Matt that we have a significant mental health issue in town that needs to be addressed compassionately. I agree with Peggy that we need resources, places for these people to live. I have a lot of low-income houses myself that I rent to a lot of people, and I've worked through with a lot of people in tough spots, getting them on their feet and getting them moved on. I really, really care about that side of it. This resolution for me is mostly just about getting the public to have both sides of the issue looked at in depth before we approve a B3 property to be zoned for this use. So I'm not against a B3 property being used for this use, but I am for the public, the homeless, the vagrants, I'm not having good words here, the business owners, the property owners, everybody have a share in making these decisions. And it feels like with what they're doing with Title 21, we're not going to have that level of scrutiny that we should be entitled to as a community. And so I appreciate all the inputs. I really do. And it's a resolution. We're here to talk about things. If it's go up, down, we're talking. That's what's important.
Yeah, this has been a rich discussion. Thanks for bringing this forward, Paul. I did put the form into the chat. If you have any challenges with it, please send a message there and we can make sure that it works. I think we've got it all sorted, especially for business owners. So you should be able to get through the form all the way. Thank you, everyone. This subject isn't done or over even with this vote. So we'll continue this discussion and be part of the community solutions on these problems, because like Jared said, we all care about this and we need to work towards those solutions. Thank you all. I'm sorry to feel like I'm rushing us, but I do want to have time for neighborhood and community announcements, and I also want to make sure that we actually vote on the door prize situation. So now is the chance to again turn it over for neighborhood and community announcements. Again, you can raise your hand, you can wave at me. I'll try to just keep track of folks as I see, and we'll get the ball rolling with Michelle. Welcome.
Hi, as you all know, and now half of you in the room hate me. No, I'm kidding. I'm a resident of Spenard, and I would like to introduce my coworker, Erin Whitney, who is running for the Chugach Electric Association board. And I think she'd be a great candidate. She promised me my job's not on the line for saying this. That's a joke. But she is in the energy world. She is an expert in energy, and I'll just let her speak for herself. But I think she would be a great, do a great job in this position. So Erin, I think you're online.
Thank you, Michelle. And I just tried to turn on my video, but it says the host has not enabled it. So I don't know if it's possible to turn it on. Otherwise, you can all make up mental pictures about what I look like. I work with Michelle at the University of Alaska. I do energy research day in and day out. I was raised here in Anchorage and am raising my own family here. And I'm here to remind you about the Chugach Electric Board of Directors elections that are coming up. You are all members, as is everyone now in Anchorage. I am running for 1 seat on the Board of Directors. Elections open on April 16th. They will be online this year. I will put a link in the chat so you can go and get some more information about my background as well as the other candidates. And I think the important thing to me is that you vote, because we have member-owned cooperatives up here, which is not always the case in the rest of the United States. And so you should make your voice heard. There's a lot of changes happening in the rail belt. Chugach now, with the acquisition of MLMP, is by far the largest utility in the rail belt, and I think has an incredible opportunity to help lead the rail belt towards increased coordination that would lower rates for all of us and increase the efficiency across the rail belt grid, which would, as I said, lower rates, but also enable more renewables because we have a bigger grid to absorb them. And I think there's a number of ways we can do that. We can also incentivize new electrification strategies. Some of those might include electric vehicles through other means as well. I'm also interested in hearing your concerns, your questions. I have a commitment to transparency and accessibility, and I'll put some contact info in the chat here as well when I'm done. But again, please vote. It's your cooperative. It's my cooperative. You have a voice in the direction. So, and I think I see a hand there, so that's great. I would love to take a question, or maybe that's.
Oh no, Erin, those aren't questions. Okay. Thanks for sharing and give us the chat. But we're in announcements, so I'm going to go to Sarah, and then I'm going to go to Jed, and then Phil. So welcome, Sarah.
Hello, thank you. I wanted to let everybody know that all of the libraries are open. So all 5 branches are open for browsing service. We still have shortened hours, so 10 to 6 at LUSAC, Monday through Saturday, but folks are welcome to come in, browse the shelves, and check out just like they used to. We ask that folks wear masks, and yeah, if anybody has any questions, they can find me at the library. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And over to Jed and then Phil.
Hey, thanks, everyone. My name is Jed Smith. I am on the board of the Friends of Fish Creek, and I wanted to just put a quick plug in regarding that CIP polling. Last year, there was a project for daylighting Fish Creek feasibility study. It's probably something in the order of about $100,000 for a feasibility study to daylight Fish Creek. We've made tons of improvements in parks and trails along the creek. And now I think it's time to start thinking a little bit bigger about actually getting that creek flowing. And so this would be a big step toward that. So as you're putting in your priorities, please just consider that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that May is cleanup month. And as we are walking around, we're starting to see all of the things that we buried last fall, as well as all of the things that we lost through the various layers of snow all winter, starting to emerge. And the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring Cleanup Month. I'm going to put together a team for the Friends of Fish Creek, but I want to encourage anyone here to join or start your own team. You can come up with a cool name. Joe Spenard's Squeaky Clean Streets team is not yet taken, so you can have it if you want. But if you go to the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce website, there's a place to go and sign up. And I think it'd be a great way for us to kind of show our neighborhood spirit and start cleaning up Spenard and hence keeping Fish Creek clean. So thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Jed. And Phil Isley, welcome.
Hi. Every Thursday night at 7 o'clock through April, I do a guided hypnotic meditation, and it focuses on improving your health and aligning your chakras. So if anybody's interested, it's at 6000 C Street, which is the Adams Center, stands for Ancient Teachings of the Masters. And it lasts about an hour, a little bit longer than that, and it'll help you sleep better and feel better. And if you have any questions, you can probably get in touch with me.
Great, thank you, Phil. I also have announcements. One would be, I want to thank all of our volunteers who helped make the West Anchorage Candidate Forum happen. That was 2 forums we hosted in March. And hey, there's rumblings of maybe hosting a runoff forum. Anyone interested? But we had a lot of support from West Anchorage community councils, but especially Spenard. We showed up as volunteers. So Tani did a great job moderating. Meg was not only our timekeeper, but she also did all the candidate outreach. Pamela Raygor, Amber Glasser, Julie Leonard, and Peggy Oth all helped on the committee as well. We met a lot of times in order to make that happen, and we had a lot of fun. And I think we pulled off a really successful candidates forum. So just wanted to really shout out to them because there was so much that went into it, and it was a really successful event. And we'll see how the election goes someday. And then I also received an email from the Restore, and since that's in our neighborhood, I just want to let folks know the Restore has a few things going on through Habitat for Humanity, including on April 22nd. They're having an open house at their building because they will now have a Make It classroom. I don't know what that means, so I'm thinking about going, but ways to continue to stay engaged on that front. And then I get to just keep going because I'm me. I have one more announcement in my professional hat. So I work with NeighborWorks Alaska, and every year we host a Paint the Town event where we paint the exterior of different deserving neighbors throughout the community. This year, we've got a few homes lined up, and we're looking to support a veteran. So if you know a veteran who's deserving, has contributed to the community, to the world, and just could use some support in getting their home painted, some minor repairs done, we can make that happen this June. So I'll add the information into the chat, but I want to make sure that you all know of that opportunity. Any other announcements? I'm gonna just go back and make sure I've got the numbers for our resolution vote. Arena, maybe you can help me. Arena, can I turn it over you to share what the vote was? Because I think that'll just be easier.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm just double checking. We had a couple of people vote who weren't eligible. But before I speak, I think Meredith had something that she also wanted to share while I'm checking.
I do. Can y'all hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, it won't let me do a video either. I had it made it so where I couldn't see the video, and then it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. But anyway, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I've been rescued. I live on Doris Street. I own the blue house on Doris Street, and I'm home almost all the time, but I have been rescuing a bunch of feral cats that are in the neighborhood. I've talked to some neighbors about, there was a family who would get litters of kittens and then just release them. So they're all about 2 years old. And this winter I found a litter frozen under my shed. And that was really sad. So then the next cat who showed up was pregnant, and she came inside and had babies in my basement. And now I realize there's like a whole feral cat community because I videoed 13 of them in one night. So I just want to put a word out that I'm not trying to trap anyone's pets. So if you have a wandering cat, just double check that you've got a collar on it. So then I'll just re-release it. But currently I've been doing it very slowly and letting them come in my bathroom and warm up and get to be tamed. They're like, once they realize that they can get food and be warm, they are so friendly. So if anyone's hunting for a cat, I have extra cats. Also, I've been using a lot of the shelters in the area are helping out. So anyway, I just felt bad for all the little cold critters. And if anyone's looking for a cat, if I could get my video, I have one who would love to be seen, but I can't figure it out. But anyway, I just wanted to say if anyone wants a cat, I have lots of very nice cats.
Thanks, Meredith. I wish we knew what secret spot we needed to click to allow more videos. I'm not sure. Neither, yeah, Meg doesn't know either. From our end, it looks like everyone can share videos, so we'll figure it out, we hope, by the end. Okay, Irina, I'm going to turn it over to you for the resolution.
Okay. I'm ready now. So we had 16 people voted no and 4 people voted yes. So the resolution will fail.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And thanks for the discussion, everybody. We are moving into our final activity, door prize. So I just need to have a real decision first. Our executive board would like to request $510 be used for door prizes to local businesses, and then maybe some mailing, just so that we can have gift cards and give those away at our meetings, but also support local businesses. We talked about it briefly last month, but then just kind of move forward with it and want to make sure that we have a documented decision on that. So is there any opposition? That's how I'm going to do this. Any opposition to allowing the executive board to use $510 for door prizes to local businesses and potentially mail them and deliver them to folks? Okay. Irene, you're muted.
There. Just quickly, I'm not opposed to that. It sounds like a good way to get business started for a lot of people locally, but could we get an estimate on the treasurer's report? Like how much money's left? Is 500 a reasonable amount without breaking the bank?
Certainly. So we're doing our audit right now, but without giving the specific numbers, because I don't know them offhand, we have like $26,000-ish in our account. So I don't think that it will break the bank. And in fact, will help the community with the funds.
Okay. I just want to make a note, actually, a correction on the resolution vote. So I had messaged with a member who has multiple people in their home, and I don't think that was included in Irina's total count. And we're not in person, so we can't say it. We can't figure this out in person. But Irina, there were 3 more that weren't in the form. Was that included in what you said 4 that said yes? No, okay. So there were 7 that voted yes, but there were 16 that voted no for the resolution. So I just want to make sure that change is clear. Thank you. Okay, so that is the actual vote. Yes, okay. And now we can do the random drawing for the door prize. Irina does that with the sign-in sheet, so I hope you signed in at the beginning of the meeting, and I hope you're still here.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. We had 18 people sign in, so we're gonna do a random number generator from 1 to 18. Today we are giving away 2 $25 gift cards to the Writer's Block. It was a fan favorite, so that's what this week is. If you have some suggestions on what you would like next month to be, shoot one of us a message and we'll get it on the list. All right, 1 to 18. The number is 11. Who is it? Number 11 is Jerry.
Is Jerry
Congratulations,
still
Jerry.
here? There he is.
Yeah, Jerry's there. And then we're gonna give one more away. The number is 16, and that is Matt. Yay!
Oh, no way, Matt Duncan, great.
Sounds good. So if you can email or message me your email addresses, that would be great. I will try to send the cards electronically, and if not, I'll email for your address.
Great, thank you.
Ask a question about cards because I forgot. I don't think you said this. is there any rules about, did we do anything like where somebody can't win in like the next 3 months so that gives more people a chance to win? Or did I miss that from last month?
Yeah, so I have to be a member and then only win once every 6 months.
Okay, cool.
And present to win. It's all on the agenda.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Since I'm a big winner. If the business are donating these cards, what's the 500 for?
We're not looking for donated cards for this specifically. We are using the money to get the cards so that we're contributing to local businesses.
I see.
Mhm.
Whatever.
Feel good about it.
Well, see, I've won, so.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I know we went quite long, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Peggy. Do we have a second? Irene is seconding with a wave. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again on Wednesday, May 5th.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lindsay.
Bye-bye.